So Sindi, you have been working with BAOBAB for Women's Human Rights. You lead BAOBAB for Women's Human Rights. And you have had some amazing successes with creation of some groups that focus on violence against women. Could you tell us about the groups and what got them started? What was the impetus?
Well, I got mad at well, let's talk about Java, for instance. I got mad at several groups, but and I wanted to get even, and so I decided to train them. So we invited 25 journalists from both print and electronic media, and we invited them into the BAOBAB office for a talk. We called it a round table discussion because some people think you cannot tell them how to do their jobs, they're professionals. And so we just had a debate. And then I kept asking questions, and then they kept realizing that actually they didn't know issues. And so I said, well, BAOBAB, we do training, and it won't cost you anything. And so for 3 years, we kept asking the same journalists back twice a year for training. And in the third year in Abuja, they decided that they wanted to form a coalition. And that's the group, Journalists Against Violence Against Women. They have been in existence for 2 years now. We launched them in 2008, and they're doing very well. And now whenever we ask them to come out for something, they do. For instance, they came out en masse for the Indecent Dressing Bill when we demanded a public hearing, and the women came into the Houses of Parliament in Abuja, and we had 30 journalists covering the event, and it was all over the newspapers. Before, that would never have gotten a mention. You would have heard the government side, the minister has said this, but this time it was that women flooded the Houses of Parliament, and this was what they're doing, and I'm very happy with them. So that's one of the things, and that's a success, because now they're no longer like an arm of BAOBAB, they're almost like an organization in themselves. Of course, they're still housed in BAOBAB, but they're now going out and looking for events and calling things to our attention. Did you hear so when Grace Ushang died, she was raped, and they called us up and said, well, she was raped, this young youth corps member, she was raped, and that the government is doing nothing, and what are we going to do? And the Journalists Against Violence Against Women actually started asking questions and held the government of Borno State to account. So I'm real happy for that.
So it's not just a qualitative change in the reporting, they're also mobilizing and advocating as well.
I call them activists rather than journalists, because what they're doing as well as reporting is activism, so they like that.
What do you think is the biggest problem of violence against women within Nigeria? What are the characteristics of it?
Secrecy. The lack of reporting that it happens. I think culture and religion plays a large part. Women are socialized to believe that the men are the heads of the house and that women must submit, But I tell them that nowhere in any text that it says a man should beat his wife, and that when they transgress in the garden, that God called both Adam and Eve, he did not tell Adam to go and tell Eve that she has erred, so you don't, so you can go and say, well, you did this, and then, no, he said, both of you, I told you this and that. And so that's the kind of re-socializing that we try to do with women, because it's very difficult to get women to do things that they consider outside of their religious context. And so we have to use what I call a feminist interpretation of the Bible and of the Koran, so that women will see that those rights are there and that it is the practice of internalizing myths perpetuated by men that are making you, you know, participate in your own suppression. And so, and culture, the stigma of being a loose woman, a disobedient woman, you know, they don't say that a woman is powerful, they say she's stubborn. And so we want to turn those negative words into powerful tools, and that is what we teach.
You do a lot of work with university young women.
Mm-hmm.
Are you finding this problem among them?
Good Lord, yes. Although now, once they have left the university, somehow we keep in touch with them. And these women, young women, because you see in Nigeria too, this thing about when somebody is an adult is a problem. Because most university students live at home, their parents are paying their tuition, and so they will abide by what is, and you find a 40-year-old man or woman talking about youth groups and stuff, and I'm like, no, that is a limiting technique, yeah? It's a controlling technique. It gives the person that's telling you that you're a youth at 25 the power to dictate how you live your life. And so we worked with universities, and we have I think I've told you about this before, real powerful group that we did the Leadership Institute for, and these women are going places. In fact, one of the initiatives that they're starting or want to start is to teach their parents how to prepare for retirement, so that there will not be a drain on these young women when they enter the workforce. So they want to teach financial management to parents. You know, at one point, they wouldn't even dream of that. Well, first of all, the parents wouldn't listen because they're youth. But the women are no longer the young women are not accepting this. This real awesome group of young women, 25 of them, and they're going places, you know. One has just become a millionaire, a Naira millionaire, but she has made her first million, and she's using it to do drama clubs in schools, and to get younger women in the senior secondary and junior secondary schools to compete with the men for political positions within the school councils and so on. And we're saying that that is where political participation starts. So they're doing very good things. I like these young women. They're good.
But just bringing it back to the subject of violence against women, you started with saying, yes, they do face a lot of it.
Oh, yes. Sexual harassment. And the lecturers have all the power. And they don't want to bring the violence or the sexual harassment to the notice of, because these lecturers have their future in their hands. If I report you have lots of colleagues, and I may be a level 1 student now, but I have to go to level 5, and I will meet another you all the way in. And then incest in the homes. Some of these young people are already spoken for, you know, and the men have not married them, but they're putting them through schools, and they have to adhere to a certain behavior. And the man who is paying for their education, if he slaps them or does anything to them, the parent is not going to object, because the person has taken the financial load off the parents. And the girl is not going to say anything because she wants to get that degree, you know. And sometimes if you report it to the parents, the mother's like, well, even if you're married and you report domestic violence as well. Okay, is there blood? Is he feeding you? You know, has he brought another woman into the house? You know, no? Well then, I'm sorry, you have to go back to your husband's house or whatever. But I think the leadership and gender and human rights training that we're given, I think the women are no longer, the young women are no longer ready to accept certain things. And for instance, there was a tradition on the campus that you see a young man and you have earmarked him as your future husband. So then these women do, you don't know the atrocities that happen. These young women now will go to the men's dorm and cook for this man and wash his clothes and this and that because they believe that at the end of their college years, that's their husband. This man is going to marry them. And during that relationship, the man, in fact, does act like a husband, including chastising, you know. But that is also changing as the women become more aware of their power. Because they do have power, they just don't know how to access that power. And sometimes you don't have to tell them that they have the power. If you ask the right questions and start the right conversations, they will bring it out.
So what would your advice be to young women or to women who face this kind of a problem? What kinds of strategies should they employ?
You should always, always, always report to someone, even if it's just a roommate, a friend, and in the final analysis you can always come to BAOBAB, you know. But if you accept violence in silence, one day he will kill you. Even the threat of violence is, you know, it's not acceptable. And they have to know that, you know. And if a man says he's going to kill you, he will at some point kill you. Somebody needs to know that you're being threatened. Somebody needs to know that you're in a situation of danger. And you are never guilty. For instance, if someone is walking from their dorm and they pass in a dark alley, you know, to get home, and they are raped, it is not your fault. You have not committed any crime. And I think that's one of the most liberating things that the young women hold on to, that they didn't do anything wrong. Because normally they are accused of, well, why did you go there? Or why were you wearing that short skirt? Or why? And we're saying it is not your fault. You have the right, you know, to walk in a dark alley. You know, you have the choice of what to wear, you know. And I think but of course, once young women know about responsibility to themselves, first of all, you have a responsibility to yourself, and then to your family, if you will, and then to your community. But you cannot put yourself last, and a lot of these women put themselves last. They have responsibility to everything except themselves, and so we tell them, you have a responsibility to yourself, number one.
And yet there are men who do stand against violence against women. We do have such a group.
Well, yeah.
Could you tell us about them as a sort of a case study again?
Yeah, we started. You cannot come into BAOBAB and spend more than 5 minutes without somebody talking about violence against women. Once it was 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, and we were discussing how are we going to do this. And we said, well, there are a lot of men that come through BAOBAB every month. Let's talk to them. We're going into an area where in Nigeria, in Lagos, we call them area boys, young male hooligans who harass women, and they're the ones that, if you go to the marketplace or the bus terminal, you know, they make comments and so on. We said we want to go there. And some people say, well, we wish we could get some men to go. Maybe I'll have my husband. And then my PA, a young woman, she's about she was about 20 at the time, she says, why don't we get all these men who come in here to go with us? No, she said to escort us. And I said, no, they should not escort us. We are not powerless. They should join us in this. And so we sent them emails and we said, look, we want to have a meeting with you. And so they came and we sat down and we actually trained them, and we had all our stickers, you know, zero tolerance to violence against women. There are no words for rape, only sentences. We had a hot debate. And then they thought it was only going to be for that year. But every 16 days of activism, they come out and, you know, and then we train them. And we invite them to other programs and other trainings. And when we were doing theater of the oppressed for young primary school students, this is using drama to get the young. You can't hold the attention of young people, especially on something like violence against women, when it's not a concern. So we used theater of the oppressed, and they dramatized it and so on. The men came out, and some of them would bring because they want their children to be part of it. And so almost, you could say by osmosis, they started getting what we were talking about, and they constituted themselves into a group. And now they're asking for a more official role in BAOBAB. And so now they are constituted into men and boys against violence against women. And for the first time this year, they came out as men and boys against violence against women. So that's how it started. And I think that is a good way to get men involved, because I think men should get the information and then share the knowledge with other men, but they should never speak for women, because we have been voiceless long enough and we want to speak for ourselves. They can support us, yeah? We have a creche, and when we have a conference or something, just one day, we invite the men. The men will watch the children while the women, you know, they are not necessarily their children, but, you know, participants come from all over Nigeria. And we call our men out. Men, you know, we have a job for you. You know, come and help us to do this. And they come and they watch the children, and they take them outside, and, you know, when they're crying and stuff. And so they're very accommodating.
That's great. Thanks, Cindy. One last question. As you know, it's WLP's 10th anniversary.
Yes.
And on this occasion, what message would you like to share with the rest of the partnership?
I have always said that the thing that I find attractive about WLP is that it lives its principles. It walks the talk. And above all, it has respect for its partners. And I believe that the partners also respect WLP, but I think we need to be more, what's the word I'm looking? I read literature like Manas, I can't remember. I think we need to gather around more. I know we can't have a gathering more than once a year, and it's even getting difficult to do that. But I think that we should celebrate WLP. Sometimes we all have our own organizations, and sometimes we're wearing several hats. But I think wherever we go, we should say that we're a WLP partner. I think we should bold WLP in everything that we do and celebrate WLP for what the opportunities it gives us, you know, to do the work that we do.
Thank you very much.
See you.
Appreciate your time. Thanks.
You're
so much,
welcome.
Cindy.